The wind carried the dust of November across the plains, whispering through the fences and abandoned barns that dotted the edge of Red River Valley. It was a land that never forgot pain. It only buried it beneath the sound of cattle bells and the distant crack of thunder. The widowed rancher, Eli Hartwell, stood on his porch that morning with his hat in hand, staring at the horizon like a man still haunted by ghosts. His wife, Martha, had been gone 3 winters now, leaving him with 2 children and a ranch that seemed to grow heavier each passing day. He wasn't looking for another woman. Not really. Not until his sister, Clara, wrote him from the east and said she'd found someone, a quiet woman named Lucy Ann, a farmer's daughter with no place left to go. Clara's letter was gentle but firm. "She's been wronged, Eli. She needs a home, and you need help with yours." He didn't answer right away, but the next morning he found himself riding to town, his chest tight with something between guilt and curiosity. Lucy Ann arrived by stagecoach 2 weeks later. She stepped down in a gray dress too thin for the cold, her eyes the color of river stones, calm but full of something deep and unspoken. The driver set her trunk beside her, tipped his hat, and rode off without a word. The townsfolk were all ready, whispering before Eli reached her. They said her family sold her contract cheap to the mail order agency after her husband's death, claimed she was barren, unable to bear children, and therefore worth less than a cow. Eli had heard rumors like that before. They stung in the air like dust from a drought. He walked up to her slow, trying not to let pity show in his face. "Mrs. Ann?" he asked. She looked up, her voice quiet but steady. "Just Lucy, if you please. I don't belong to anyone anymore." Something in her tone caught him off guard. It wasn't brokenness, it was defiance wearing the mask of politeness. Eli tipped his hat. "I'm Eli Hartwell. My sister sent for you." They rode back to the ranch in near silence. His children, Anna and Sam, watched her from the porch as the wagon came rolling in. Anna, the older one, crossed her arms and whispered something to her brother. Sam laughed, but not kindly. Lucy didn't flinch. She simply smiled at them, a small, weary smile that looked like it had forgotten how to stay long. The first few days were awkward. She cooked breakfast at dawn and fed the chickens before anyone else stirred. She barely spoke, and when she did, it was usually to apologize. Eli noticed how she'd pause sometimes, staring out across the prairie like she was waiting for something or someone that wasn't coming back. Once, late at night, he passed her room and heard her whispering through the door, her voice shaking as if she were praying or arguing with herself. One evening, when the sky burned gold and the cattle lowed across the field, Eli found her near, the fence mending a broken rail. Her hands were raw and bleeding. "You don't have to do that," he said gently. "I got hands for that kind of work." She looked up, her eyes soft but stubborn. "I don't want to just sit and be something. People bought, Mr. Hartwell. I need to earn my place." He didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever spoken to him quite like that since Martha died. Most folks treated him with pity, or respect, or silence. Lucy gave him truth, but not everyone on the ranch took kindly to her. Anna, only 12 but sharp with her mother's temper, refused to eat her cooking. She told Eli one night, "She's not like Mama. She doesn't even smile right." Eli had no answer. The girl wasn't wrong. Lucy's smiles were rare and fragile, like something half-remembered. That winter came early. Snow started falling before December, blanketing the ranch in cold silence. The work doubled. Fences collapsed under the weight of ice. Cattle wandered off and froze. Eli and Lucy worked side by side in the freezing wind, barely speaking but understanding each other without needing words. He noticed how she never complained, even when her fingers turned blue, even when the world seemed to be testing her strength, just to see if she'd break. One night, after a blizzard cut off the road to town, Eli came into the barn to find her crying softly beside a newborn calf she'd helped deliver. She wiped her face quickly, ashamed to be caught. "Sorry," she whispered. It's been so long since I held something new to life." Her voice trembled on that last word, life, as if it were both a prayer and a curse. Eli didn't know why, but something shifted in him then. He sat beside her in the hay, the wind howling through the boards above them. "Folks talk too much," he said quietly. "They call you Barren, but I've seen more life in your hands this week than in half the people I've met." She looked at him, startled, tears catching the light. "You don't have to say that," she murmured. He shook his head. "I'm not saying it to comfort you. I'm saying it because it's true." From that night on, something in the house began to thaw. Anna started sitting near Lucy when she mended clothes by the fire. Sam followed her around asking questions about the East. Even Eli found himself pausing in the doorway more often, just to listen to her hum softly to herself as she worked. But in the West, peace never lasted long. Because one cold morning, just as the snow began to melt, a man rode up to the ranch, Gate wearing a black coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He carried a letter and a claim. He said Lucy Ann was still another man's property, and he hadn't come for money. He'd come for her. The man at the gate wore winter like it belonged to him. Frost clung to his black coat and the horse beneath. Him tossed its head, snorting steam into the morning air. Lucy stood on the porch with flour on her hands, a loaf half-kneaded on the table behind her. Eli stepped out first. Anna and Sam hovering in the doorway like shadows too scared to attach themselves to the day. "You Eli Hartwell?" the rider asked, voice smooth as river ice. He had a handsome face ruined by a tired cruelty around the eyes. "Name's Mason Crow. I'm here on business." He held up a folded paper with a red ribbon wound tight around it, like a wound that wouldn't bleed. "This letter says the woman you keep in your house belongs to an agency in Abilene. Sold to them by her kin to pay a debt. You didn't clear title, rancher. I'm here to collect her." Lucy stiffened at the word belong. Eli moved before she could speak, a slow, solid step that put him between the stranger and the door. "She isn't a mule or a plow," Eli said, quiet but hard. "Whatever paper you've got, it doesn't change that." Mason's smile thinned. "Law says what the law says. You got a sheriff in town, don't you? We can let him say it out loud if you want." The room turned colder. Lucy touched Eli's arm. "Let me look," she said, and when Mason handed over the paper, her fingers trembled as if the ribbon burned. She broke the seal with her nail and read. Her mouth parted, then closed. "It's my brother-in-law," she whispered. "He signed it after my husband died. Said he'd keep me safe. He sold me as a debt, then sold me again when I wouldn't bear him a child. This signature?" She swallowed. "It's his." Anna made a sound like something small breaking. Sam grabbed her hand without thinking, both children suddenly aware that adults could be stolen too. Eli kept his eyes on Mason. "You're not taking her today," he said. "Not until the sheriff reads that paper and tells me it's got more backbone than your tongue." Mason tipped his hat like the whole thing amused him. "Sun sets in 7 hours, Hartwell. I'll be at the hotel. Make your peace." The dust settled after he rode away, but the quiet didn't. Lucy folded the paper, hands steadier now, and set it on the table as if it were a sleeping rattler. "If it's legal," she said, voice flat, "I'll go. I won't bring trouble to your house." Eli stared at the paper like he might split it in half with his gaze. "You're not trouble," he answered. "You're the first good thing. This place has seen in 3 winters. They hitched the team and headed to town before noon. The road cut through cottonwood and frozen creek, the wagon wheels creaking like old bones. Near the ridge, they met 2 riders from the Lakota settlement west of the river, Black Elk and his niece, Weah. Eli had traded cattle with them after the last blizzard. They'd helped him find strays in the coulees when the wind tried to carry everything away. Waya rode close when she saw Lucy's face. "Storm in your eyes," she said softly. "Who sent it?" Lucy tried to smile. "A man with a letter." Waya nodded. "Letters bite. Spit them out before they swallow you." In town, the sheriff read the paper slow, tracing the crooked letters with a finger. He was an Irishman named Malone, gone broad in the shoulders and soft in the belly, but his eyes still knew how to weigh a man. "It's legal," he said at last, and Lucy went very still. "But the agency's stamp is old. If the debt's already paid by work or time, the claim could be dust. I can't say from this." He turned to Mason, who lounged in a chair like a cat on a hearth. "You got proof the debt stands?" Mason's smile didn't reach anything living. "Proof sits on the rancher's porch. A woman who won't give children is a debt that keeps on owing." The room breathed in and didn't breathe out. Eli stepped forward, voice low and even. "Say that again, and you'll eat those teeth." Malone barked, "Enough!" but his jaw was tight. He turned the paper over, then looked at Lucy. "There's another way," he said. "If a woman declares she was sold against her will, we can set a hearing, bring witnesses. Not a fancy court, but it stands." Mason's coat creaked as he leaned back. "And where will you find a judge before spring?" "Thaw!" Wia's voice cut in from the doorway. "My uncle bears witness," she said. "The woman came to this valley with no horse, no protection, and the sound of chains in her breath. We heard it. I will speak." Black Elk nodded once. A mountain's answer. Malone scratched his chin. "Hearing at sundown, in the church hall. I'll take the risk." He looked at Mason. "You don't like it? Ride to Abilene and fetch a judge faster than Winter." Mason stood, eyes flat. "I'll be there," he said, "and so will the men who paid me." They rode home under a sky sharpening to steel. Eli fixed the gate, checked the cattle, and cut extra wood as if work could build a wall around the coming hour. In the kitchen, Lucy braided Anna's hair. With slow fingers, her voice a thread. "There was a time I believed a house needed children to be a home," she whispered. "And then I came here and found a home already waiting." Anna looked up, eyes bright with worry. "What if they take you?" Lucy kissed her crown. "Then I will walk back. Even if it takes a year, I will walk back to this porch." At sundown, the church hall filled with boots and breath and rumor. Lantern light shook on the boards. Malone stood at the front with the letter. Mason at the side with 2 hired men, each with eyes like coins. Black Elk and Waya took chairs near Lucy. Eli stayed close, his hat in his hands, knuckles white. Malone began. "We're here to settle a claim on a person, which makes my stomach boil. But we'll do it by what law we can reach." He held up the paper. "Who stands for the woman?" Eli spoke without moving. "I do." Waya told what she'd seen. On the trail, how Lucy wore silence like bruises. Black Elk added few words that weighed a lot. Anna, small and fierce, stood on a bench and said, "She sings to the bread before it rises." Men coughed into their hands. Mason rose, smooth as a knife lifting. "A debt is a debt," he said. "Her kin sold the paper and the agency paid. This rancher took what wasn't his to take." He nodded, and one of his men opened a leather folio, drawing out a second document. "And if you doubt the first, here's a fresh claim from last month, properly stamped and signed by a judge in Dodge." Malone frowned and reached for it. Lucy stared hard at the new seal and went pale. She took a step back, breath hitching. "That stamp," she whispered. "It doesn't circle the eagle. It slices it. They only do that in Arkansas territory, not Kansas." Mason's eyes flickered, just for a heartbeat, and Waya caught it, like a hunter sees the quiver of brush. Lies wear new coats, Weah said. They still smell like lies. Before Malone could answer, a shot cracked the night. A window shattered. Lanterns wobbled. The crowd reeled as a gust of winter bullied the door open. Mason's second man had fired, into the ceiling, in a show meant to frighten or to start. A stampede. It worked. Men shouted. Someone knocked the table. The letter went flying. And in the confusion, Mason reached for Lucy's wrist. Eli moved like the earth deciding to turn. He caught Mason's arm, wrenched it back, and the two men crashed into the pews with a sound like dry bones. Malone bellowed. Black Elk rose without hurry and placed a hand on the gunman's shoulder, and the man lost interest in trouble. Anna screamed Lucy's name. The fallen lantern rolled, flame licking at the edge of a hymn book. Smoke started to climb. Mason twisted. Free, eyes wild now, and lunged again. Not for Lucy, but for the letter tumbling on the floorboards. Eli saw the same thing at the same time. Both reached. Only one of them stood up with it. And outside, beyond the church, a second rider's whistle split the dusk, followed by the first hungry crackle of fire catching the dry grass that ran straight toward the Hartwell ranch. The fire started small, a lick of orange along the dry grass near the edge of town, but the wind carried it greedy and quick, pushing the flames east toward the open prairie. By the time Eli and Lucy stumbled out of the church, the smoke had already turned the horizon, the color of blood. Townsfolk shouted, horses screamed, and somewhere behind them, the last of the church's windows burst in the heat. Eli didn't stop to think. "The ranch," he said. "The wind's taking it straight there." Lucy's breath caught. "Anna? Sam!" They ran for the wagon, Malone calling after them, "I'll send men!" But Eli didn't wait. He whipped the reins hard, the horses jolting forward through the smoke. Mason Crow was nowhere to be seen. He'd vanished in the chaos like a snake slipping back into tall grass. The road home felt longer than it ever had. Black ash blew across their faces. The air burned their throats. Halfway down the ridge, Lucy saw flames in the distance, low and crawling, but too close to the house to be anything but danger. "God help us," she whispered, clutching the seat. Eli's jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the land ahead. "He will," he said, though his voice trembled under the weight of it. When they reached the ranch, the barn was already half swallowed by fire. Sparks leapt to the roof like angry stars. The cattle were bawling inside, trapped behind the gate. Eli jumped down, shouting for Sam and Anna, but his voice was lost in the roar. Lucy grabbed a pail, running toward the well, her skirts catching cinders that she slapped away with her hands. "Papa!" Sam's voice came from the porch. He and Anna were there, faces streaked with soot, clutching each other. It started. "By the barn!" Sam cried. "Someone threw a lantern. We saw him ride off. Black coat." Lucy froze. "Mason!" Eli didn't answer. He only moved. He shoved the barn doors open and waved the cattle out, coughing through the smoke. One of the beams gave way, crashing down where he'd been a heartbeat before. Lucy screamed his name, but when the smoke cleared, he was still there, limping, face blackened with ash. Together, they fought until dawn. The children hauling water, Lucy tearing her hands raw on the bucket rope, Eli dragging the last of the calves into the open field. By the time the fire was out, the barn was gone. The air smelled like loss and iron. They sat in the mud when it was over, too tired to speak. The sunrise looked cruelly beautiful, spreading gold over what was left of their world. Eli glanced toward Lucy. Her hair burned at the ends, her skin blistered at the wrists, and saw something unbroken in her gaze. She was shaking, but she hadn't bent. "You saved us," he said quietly. She looked at him, eyes wet. "No, we saved each other." Malone rode in before noon, 2 deputies behind him. "We caught one of Crow's men at the stables," he said. "He was packing to leave town." He handed Eli a small tin box. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was the letter, blackened at the edges but still whole. The man said Crow took off before dawn, headed south toward Dodge with a wagon full of forged contracts. There's a marshal there who's been looking for him. Snake's got a trail of women's names behind him. Lucy reached for the letter. Then it's true, she whispered. He's been selling what never belonged to him. Malone nodded. And we've got enough witnesses now. You'll need to testify when the marshal comes through. Lucy hesitated. If I do, it'll bring him back here. Eli's hand found hers, rough and steady. Let him come. This land's seen worse men. For 2 weeks, they rebuilt what they could. Neighbors brought lumber, Malone's wife sent blankets, and even the Lakota came with tools and strong arms. Waya stayed to help Lucy plant the early spring seeds. In the evenings, Lucy would sing softly while the children dozed, near the fire. Her voice was cracked but warm, the kind that made silence feel like safety instead of emptiness. One night, when the stars hung low and clear, Eli stepped onto the porch where she stood watching the horizon. You could leave, he said softly. Go east when this is done. Start new. She smiled faintly. And where would I go? There's nothing east of shame for me. You don't owe anyone shame, he said. Not for what they did to you. Lucy turned, her eyes searching his. And what do you owe, Eli Hartwell? You lost your wife, your barn, half your herd. Why do you still stand beside me? He hesitated, the truth slow but sure. Because I meant it when I told you. You're not here to give life. You are life. She looked away, blinking hard. And what if I can't give you more than this? Then this is enough. But the peace didn't last long. 3 nights later, Wea came running from the ridge, breathless and pale. Riders, she gasped. 5 of them, headed this way from the south. One wears black. Eli's heart turned to stone. He looked toward the barn's empty frame, then to Lucy and the children. Get inside, he said. Bar the door. Lucy's voice shook. You can't fight them alone. Wasn't planning to, he said, reaching for his rifle. Malone's. Men are 2 hours behind. We just have to hold till then. The sound of hooves grew louder, like thunder coming for what little they had left. Lucy pulled the children close, the cabin's walls trembling as the riders crested the hill. She looked once more at Eli through the window, his figure outlined against the rising moon, and whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken in years. The lead rider dismounted first, boots crunching on frozen dirt. It was Mason Crow. His smile had died somewhere on the road south. His eyes were darker now, empty of charm. You burned my past, he called out. So I came to burn yours. And behind him, 4 rifles lifted into the cold night air. The night bled cold light through the cabin window, silvering Lucy's face as she pressed the children beneath the table. Anna clutched her brother's arm so tight he didn't dare move. Outside, the hoofbeats stopped. Silence came next. The kind that makes your heart feel too loud inside your chest. Eli stepped out onto the porch, rifle steady in his hands. Behind him, the cabin's single lamp burned low, its glow flickering through the frost-coated window like a heartbeat fighting to stay. Mason Crow stood just beyond the yard fence, 4 men fanning out behind him, their silhouettes sharp against the moonlit snow. His black coat hung open now, revealing a gun belt that gleamed like hunger. "You're a fool, Hartwell," Mason called out. "You could have walked away clean. Let me take what's mine, and we'd both be richer for it." Eli's voice was calm, but the edge in it was made of iron. "She's not yours, and never was. I don't deal in flesh or lies." Mason smiled, though it didn't touch his eyes. "Every man deals in something. Yours just happens to be pride." A gust swept through the valley, carrying smoke from the still-scorched barn. Lucy peeked through the curtains, fear and fury warring in her chest. She could see Eli standing straight and alone, 1 man against 5, and she whispered, "Please, Lord, don't take another from us." Mason's hand moved first, but not. For his gun. For his words. "Boys," he said softly, "burn it again. All of it." 1 man lit a torch, another kicked the gate wide. And then, before fire could reach the earth, Eli fired. The shot cracked like thunder, cutting through the night. The torchbearer fell without a sound, his flame tumbling harmlessly into the snow. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then the other guns barked back, and the valley erupted in chaos. Bullets tore through the fence posts, splintered wood, and punched into the cabin's side. Lucy threw herself over the children, whispering prayers between every breath. Eli ducked behind the wagon, firing again, counting his bullets, counting the seconds between reloads. He'd fought raiders before, years ago when the war had still left ghosts wandering the frontier. But this felt different. This wasn't war. It was personal. Inside, Lucy's fear broke into motion. She crawled to the window, found Eli's extra rifle by the door, and loaded it with shaking hands. "Stay down," she told the children, her voice trembling but sure. She opened the window just enough to aim through the crack. Outside, Mason's men were circling the barn's ruins, thinking to flank. Lucy steadied the gun on the sill, whispered a name she'd once stopped believing in, and fired. The shot hit true. 1 man dropped to his knees and didn't rise again. Eli turned, startled, saw her silhouette against the light, and felt something burn deep in his chest that wasn't fear. She met his eyes across the distance. Just a glance. But it said everything. "We fight together," Mason snarled. "Enough!" he shouted, pulling his revolver. "Burn the cabin now!" Before his men could move, a new sound rose from the ridge, a shout, rough and wild, followed by the pounding of hooves. Lanterns glowed in the distance, moving fast. Sheriff Malone and his deputies, with Black Elk and Wee Ya leading the front, riding through the snow like avenging fire. Their horses kicked up wind and fury as they came down the hill. Crow's men hesitated, the sudden turn cracking their courage in half. Eli didn't waste the chance. He fired again, dropping the man nearest the gate. "It's over, Crow!" Malone bellowed. "Drop the gun or I'll hang you myself before dawn!" Crow's eyes darted between them, the rancher in front, the law behind, and something in him snapped. He fired once, hitting the post beside Eli's head, then turned and ran for his horse. But Wee Ya was faster. Her lasso whirled through the air and caught his arm mid-swing. He stumbled, fell into the snow, his gun flying out of reach. Eli was on him before he could rise, pinning him with 1 knee and wrenching the revolver away. Crow spat blood, his voice rough. "She's nothing," he hissed. "Just a broken thing dressed in pity." Eli's hand trembled, but his voice was steady. "Then what does that make you? A man who tried to own her." He looked up at Malone. "Take him." They bound Crow and his surviving men, hauling them into the sheriff's wagon. Lucy stepped out of the cabin, the children clinging to her skirts, her face streaked with soot and tears. When she saw Eli standing there, rifle lowered, something in her finally gave way. She ran to him, burying her face against his chest, her sobs shaking them both. Malone turned away, giving them their moment. "We'll send word to Dodge," he said quietly. "Marshall'll take him from there. You won't see this man again." As the wagons rolled out, silence fell once more. The snow drifted soft and slow, covering the churned earth, the blood, the broken fence. Lucy pulled back to look at Eli, her hand still on his coat. "You could have died," she whispered. He smiled faintly, weary but alive. "So could you. Seems we're both too stubborn." They stood there until the last lantern disappeared down the road. The children came running, clutching at them both. Anna's voice was small. "Is it over?" Lucy knelt, brushing hair from the girl's face. "Yes," she said softly. "But sometimes when the storm ends, you still have to learn to breathe again." That night, they didn't sleep. They sat by the fire, what was left of it, and listened to the wind outside. Eli's shoulder bled where a bullet had grazed him, but he didn't complain. Lucy wrapped the wound, her hands gentle. "You're going to have a scar," she murmured. He chuckled. "I've got plenty already." She looked at him then, really looked, and something like peace flickered in her eyes. "Then maybe it's time we stop bleeding for what's gone," she said, "and start building for what's left." Outside, dawn crept slow over Red River Ridge. For the first time in a long while, the world felt quiet. Safe, almost. But far to the south, in the marshal's camp near Dodge, a courier rode through the night with a message sealed in black wax. News of a man named Crow, and a ledger of women's names that reached farther than the law could count. And on that list, written in a neat, cruel hand, was one name still circled in red ink: Lucy Ann. The thaw came early that year, but the land still smelled of ash. By March, the grass at Red River Ridge had begun to rise again, thin, green, and brave against the wind. The barn was half rebuilt, the fences mended, and for the first time in years, laughter had returned to the Hartwell house. Sam carved wooden animals by the porch, Anna read aloud from her mother's old Bible, and Lucy moved among them like sunlight through dust, quiet, constant, and warm. Yet Eli knew peace in the West never stayed for long. It began with a letter, delivered by a courier from Dodge City, a man in a dusted brown coat with the look of someone who'd ridden too far too fast. He asked for Lucy by name. She met him by the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, her heart already tight. "I'm Lucy Ann," she said. The courier nodded and handed her a folded envelope, the seal black as crow feathers. "Marshall says it's urgent," he told her, and rode off before she could speak. Eli came up beside her as she opened it. The words were few, but they chilled the air between them. Mason Crow escaped custody near the Kansas border. 2 deputies dead. Heading west, possibly toward Red River. Lucy read it twice, then lowered the page with a slow breath. "He's coming," she whispered. Eli's jaw tightened. "Then he's riding into his own grave." Malone sent men, but the valley was wide, the tracks uncertain. The Lakota scouts found signs of a lone horse by the ridge trail, fresh prints, heavy with intent. Each night, Lucy slept lighter, her dreams full of fire and smoke. Eli moved through, the house like a storm trapped in a man's skin, checking locks, oiling rifles, teaching Sam how to load and unload with trembling patience. But Lucy refused to live afraid. "He already took years from me," she said one evening, standing by the fence as the sun bled out over the plains. "I won't let him take my peace, too." Eli watched her, pride and fear warring in his chest. "You've got more courage than most men I've met." "No," she said softly. "I just got tired of running." The attack came 5 nights later. The moon was thin and low, the sky whispering of rain. Anna had just gone to bed, Sam asleep by the fire. Lucy was folding linens when she heard the horses, slow, deliberate steps across the yard. Not many. 1. She froze. The boards of the porch creaked. A shadow passed the window. Before Eli could reach the door, the glass shattered. A gunshot tore through the room, splintering wood above the hearth. Eli pulled Lucy to the floor, shouting for the children. "Upstairs now!" he hissed. They ran, barefoot and crying, while another shot thundered through the night. "Crow!" Eli roared, rising to his feet. "It's over!" From outside came a laugh, a dry, broken sound. "Not for me, Hartwell. Not till she's mine or dead." Lucy's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "He'll kill you," she whispered. Eli chambered around. "He'll have to walk through hell first." They split without speaking. Eli to the back door, Lucy toward the stairwell to guard the children. She found Anna clutching Sam, both wide-eyed and silent. "Stay here," she whispered. "Don't move till you hear my voice." She turned, caught her reflection in the cracked mirror, hair wild, eyes bright, and for the first time she saw not the woman who'd been sold, but the one who'd survived. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, the wind carrying rain that hissed against the smoldering earth. Lightning flashed, and in that brief light Lucy saw him. Mason Crow stood near the barn ruins, soaked and hollow-eyed, one arm bandaged, his coat torn. His face was gaunt, the charm gone, replaced by something feral. "You should have stayed sold," he called, voice hoarse. "You were made to be owned." Lucy stepped out from the porch, rifle steady in her hands. "And you were made to die alone." He raised his gun, but she fired first. The shot hit his shoulder, spinning him backward. Eli came around from behind the corral, his rifle drawn, but Crow, even bleeding, was still fast. He fired back, grazing Eli's leg, then stumbled toward the cabin, desperate and wild. Lightning flashed again, and for a second the whole world turned white. Crow lunged for the door, but Lucy was already there, the second rifle leveled at his chest. "Don't," she said, voice low, shaking but sure. He sneered through the pain. "You think you're righteous? You think killing me will make you clean?" "No," she said softly, "but it'll make me free." He moved. She fired. The thunder swallowed the sound, but when it cleared, Mason. Crow lay still on the porch, eyes open to nothing, the rain washing away the last of his name. Eli reached her a moment later, pulling the gun from her shaking hands. She was trembling from head to toe, but her eyes stayed fixed on the man she'd feared for years. Malone's men found them hours later, just before dawn. The sheriff took one look at the scene and sighed. "You gave the devil his due," he said quietly. Lucy nodded, voice barely a whisper. He gave it to himself. In the days that followed, the valley seemed to breathe again. The air smelled of rain instead of smoke. The cattle grazed easy. Anna began singing at breakfast. Sam slept without nightmares. And Lucy. Lucy walked barefoot through the new grass one morning and wept, not from grief, but from something close to grace. A month later, under a sky so wide it could swallow sorrow whole, Eli found her by the fence. "The marshal sent word," he said. "Crow's ring is gone. No more women will vanish because of him." She turned, smiling faintly. "Then maybe it's time we stop surviving, Eli, and start living." He nodded, took her hand. "What if I don't know how anymore?" She looked at him, eyes soft, voice steady. "Then we'll learn together?" The wind moved through the prairie grass, slow and golden. Behind them, the house stood tall again, smoke curling from the chimney. The children's laughter carried. Across the yard, light as a hymn. For the first time since the world had tried to break her, Lucy Ann felt whole. And for the first time since the fire took his past, Eli Hartwell believed in tomorrow. The West, cruel and vast, had taken nearly everything from them. But in the ashes of what burned, love had finally taken root, and this time it would not be sold.